Greetings, humans! Zbot1496 here, with a spoilerish review of the Chronicles of Riddick on 4K disc, which releases this coming Tuesday, September 17th, 2024. Now, this film is something of a guilty pleasure for us, and the 4K disc is a delight to watch. And to hold, just look at this gold sleeve and graphic novel style artwork. Arrow Video is the boutique distributor for this set, like the previous 4K pitch black disc, and they know what they have here. We loved the first film, Pitch Black, from the year 2000, a kind of Alien meets the Terminator film by writer-director David Twohy, which also served as the Star Maker vehicle for its main actor Vin Diesel. It was rated R, and they leaned into that aspect to recreate a boozy level of fear and weird delight in seeing two villains, or a villain and a villain class, go at it, in a way that the actual Alien crossovers with Predator just failed to achieve. Now, this second film, 2004's The Chronicles of Riddick, like Aliens, changes the format, but not to a tight action movie, but a sprawling space opera, a kind of early Guardians of the Galaxy with more graphic novel 14-year-old boy energy. Alas, this film had a PG rating and didn't quite deliver all the chills fans of the first film expected. The film disappointed at the box office with only 115 million in ticket sales and a 29% critics rating on Rotten Tomatoes. However, the film did enjoy a longer tail than this would suggest, as a critically successful action game came out with it as well, The Chronicles of Riddick: Escape from Butcher Bay, which earned an extremely good 90 Metacritic, although its sales of about 200,000 units disappointed that publisher. Also, a PG-13 director's cut DVD with more graphic violence and sexualization sold over 1 million units, which wasn't shabby. In 2013, the team released a third film, Riddick, which sought to essentially remake the first film, seemingly as a make-good for the fans, which we didn't really want, and it did even worse, with only 98 million in box office at that time. Now, here's the thing. That second film may indeed stray far from the first film, but we actually love it as its own thing. It's quite daring to make another kind of film entirely, and to try and put your Terminator character in a Dune this time instead of an alien, which is more to describe the flavor of ice cream this represents, as opposed to saying they're copying the plot, because they are not doing that. Meaning there isn't a spice planet with sandworms, but there are Mentat Bene Gesserit mashup computation factions, a Spice Navigator-like mutated prescient faction, a Harkonnen-like industrial chic aggressive faction, and this mythical Chosen One prophecy that the main bad guy and the main Bene Gesserit are scheming around. Plus, there are no robots. Well, you can't get it right all the time. But from our point of view, we see that as a genre setup, the Dune-type setup. Now, much like how modern high fantasy has borrowed the orcs and specific characterization from Tolkien's Lord of the Rings series, just on a much smaller set of cases to draw from. But even with the similar setups, the Dune setup and the high fantasy setup, seeing these non-terrestrial framings at all is relatively rare in human entertainment, and so they gain our special focus. And what we mean is that so much human science fiction is either present-day Earth intersected with a science fiction event, like E.T. or the Terminator, or a post-apocalyptic future where the Earth is ruined by human hand or alien invasion, like Mad Max or A Quiet Place. Very few films and shows take place in a more extensively created future or parallel world. Now, there are some standout examples, such as Star Wars, Star Trek, Ronald D. Moore's Battlestar Galactica, and Denis Villeneuve's Dune. But there is a whole host of less financially successful films that live in this more creative space, such as Battle Beyond the Stars, Enemy Mine, and David Lynch's Dune. And while it may seem like we are awarding A's for effort, these films have a wonderful transportive effect, an escape into a wholly creative space that is, in and of itself, a getaway vacation from your world. They are like the recall service in Total Recall, a far cheaper way to just inhabit a different space for a short period of time that, in these cases, cannot be had at any price. As for those of us who are actually aware of what the rest of the galaxy is actually like, this is a fan treat to compare what human creativity would conjure up. And to be fair, The Chronicles of Riddick is a better movie than all of those less financially successful films. We would in fact say that it joins the middle ground of fabulously entertaining space operas that are clearly going for a Star Wars vibe, missing that high bar, but landing at a pretty good bar nonetheless. We would peg that rung as co-located with the aforementioned Total Recall and Guardians of the Galaxy, that other multi-world adventure dealing with an outlaw with a bounty, recruited by a big-name female movie star to come and save their prime world from a vaguely magical Dark Lord. Now, of course, the necromongers in Chronicles of Riddick are more like the Dark Elves from Thor the Dark World, in terms of bearing and ship design. But we would also say they're much more interesting. The Lord Marshal, played by the brilliant Comfior, comes across as a genuinely two-dimensional villain, which is a compliment, with an interest in both recruiting troops like the Borg and also balancing his intermittently compliant forces against subversion and ambition. And all the while with a Janus-like multi-face helmet design, which we have a natural affinity for. Dame Judi Dench plays the elemental Aerion, who is part Mentat, part Force Ghost, but also all charisma, stealing all her scenes with the exception of those she shares with the electric and scheming Dame Varko, played by Tandy Newton. Geek favorite Carl Urban, who has somehow appeared in The Lord of the Rings, Star Trek, the MCU, and even a cameo in the Star Wars franchises, brings his fierce charisma to the proceedings as Commander Varko. Now, all of these characters are fun to watch as they play in this world, and the plot itself hums along nicely once you accept the terms of what you're watching. And to be clear, you are watching a comic book anti-hero with massive plot armor stroll his way with irrational self-assurance from set piece to set piece, while his seemingly invincible combat ability would appear to be his main advantage. What actually happens to move him forward is an unending series of timing coincidences. So much so that Riddick essentially knows this and tells everyone to wait for the other shoe to drop. Without going so far as Deadpool, Riddick does seem to have an irrational faith in the screenwriter to get him out of a jam. Either that or an unjustified confidence in his own ability to set up a three-dimensional chessboard and have everything work out perfectly. For example, the fact that three necromongers, for separate reasons, continuously grease the wheels for Riddick to survive fights. That the mercs rescue Riddick from certain death at the exact right time in order to collect on his bounty. And also take him exactly where he wants to go for said bounty. That the prison warden and team opened the blast door at just the right moment to divert the necromonger dropship commando team. And the climactic battle is positively riddled with these back-to-back instances of Riddick benefiting from the perfectly timed steps and mistakes of others. This quality of being Riddick, this Riddick-ulous, this ridiculousness, if you will, is the center of this film. And accepting that this is a ridiculous film is key to enjoying it. If you can accept it, like accepting the necromonger faith itself, then you can really enjoy the giant capital ships landing and stabbing into Helios Prime, and the fantastical and truly science-fictional extremes of the prison planet Crematoria. This is not to brush over the myriad other issues the film has. Riddick is nominally motivated to do the right thing in this film for the benefit of Jack, one of the survivors he saves at the end of the last film. Now, with that original film, that relationship had them share more of a found sibling duality. Now, in this film, that framing and motivation appear to blur. Jack is now Kira. Kudos to Riddick for flexing with the perhaps unintended gender fluidity moment, but Kira is presented as an obviously sexualized woman, and used against Riddick in a way that presents more as his romantic interest. It's not really clear either way, which makes for a murky outcome. And despite the superficial similarity to Dune's factions, none of the world-building lands in a deep or mesmerizing way, and only exists to paint the floor just in time for the plot. Speaking of which, coming out in 2004, the film lands in the dark ages of computer-generated effects, and none of the spaceships and science fiction landscapes look real. The whole film looks more like live-action characters superimposed on an Xbox game, which, incidentally, may have contributed to why the Xbox game adapted so well. Now, having said that, the film is a delight to watch in 4K HDR with Atmos sound. This film has not looked this good since it was in theaters, and despite the video gamey look, there's sufficient grain and color grading that it looks stylized or deliberately otherworldly. The film is generally presented in dark and metallic atmospheric hues, but has striking bright highlights and deep blacks. There was no visible digital artifacting and a surprising level of depth and detail to the image, and the Atmos sound is absolutely incredible. The Necromonger capital ships striking down into the capital world are pitch perfect, along with the wall of fire as the scorching sun side of Crematoria pushes forward. While only the theatrical cut has that Atmos sound, that's something of a letdown, as we prefer the director's cut. But all in all, we are glad to recreate the original theater experience with better sound than possible in 2004 in our own theater on the space station here. And for that reason, for recreating that experience of enjoying a gaudy space opera that knows what it is and what it needs to do, delivered with 4K HDR and Atmos, the disc earns a high-quality review. And so concludes this human version of our review. If you have feedback on it, please write in your own comments so that we can upload the galactic version to Zogplex. You can expect more discussions and reviews of theatrical movies, streaming shows, and 4K home video releases as we continue to engage with your human rectangular content. So please watch, like, subscribe, and comment so that we can continue to have the human voice reflected in the cosmos. So, until next time, farewell, humans.